What if the key to saving our planet lies in changing the way we think? Hola, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Kaylee, and I'm in an urban wetland in Concepción in Chile. I have Neurodivergent by Nature on my headphones, and Luna for company. Welcome to my first book review for a book from the Wainwright Prize for Conservation Writing's shortlist for 2026. Before the winner is announced on the 17th of September, I'll be coming back to this humidal to listen to the audiobooks and pick up as much litter as I can carry. And whilst we're here, cleaning up the litter, future Kaylee will tell you what I thought about the book. Neurodivergent by Nature is Joe Harkness's third book. His first, Bird Therapy, is probably his best known, whilst his second, Inside Outside, is widely recommended amongst teachers, including some of my old Forest School teacher colleagues. Neurodivergent by Nature was published by Bloomsbury in 2025, and Harkness narrates the audiobook himself. It's about 7.5 hours long, which translates to 256 pages in the hardback. And just like neurodiversity itself, this book doesn't fit particularly neatly into one category. It's part memoir, part case study analysis, part celebration, and part call to action. But most importantly, it's optimistic. Because, as it says in chapter 12, dwelling on frustrations wouldn't be productive and risks doing unnecessary harm. But that doesn't mean it ignores the problems within conservation. Harkness discusses everything, from the underrepresentation of ethnic minorities to the financial privilege that makes years of volunteering and unpaid experience possible for some people, but completely inaccessible to others. Despite being relatively short, it's an excellent introduction to the intersection between conservation and neurodiversity. Harkness works as a special educational needs coordinator in a school, and that professional experience is obvious from the very first chapter. He gives a remarkably clear and precise explanation of the different types of neurodivergence he discusses, without making the subject feel inaccessible or overly academic. To be a Senko, he must have graduated with a degree, got qualified teacher status, and then studied for the National Professional Qualification. So he obviously has studied the theory of neurodivergence in great depth. But what comes through on the page is his personal experience and his deep respect for the personal experiences of the people he interviewed. He discloses his own ADHD diagnosis very early on, and throughout the book we hear detailed, complicated, and sometimes really emotional stories from people working in the conservation sector. He also breaks the fourth wall and talks about the process of writing the book as a person with ADHD as he goes along. This casual, conversational feel, combined with the show-don't-tell approach, which isn't always easy to do in nonfiction, means that you can easily find yourself taking in lots and lots of information without even noticing it. The first chapter is available as a free sample from the Kobo store, and I read it during the power cut a couple of weeks ago. It is a thing of beauty, and I enjoyed listening to the audiobook version even more. If you're the kind of person who tends to buy books and then leave them on the shelf unread for ages, I urge you to just read the first page. You'll be hooked. It's a roller coaster from the hilarious opening line. It's chaotic and incredibly informative as it moves from Harkness's own experiences to moth trapping to explanations of terminology to the process of writing the book, and ends with gratitude for the people and places that made it happen. And I think that first chapter does something really clever. It gives you a taste of the way Harkness's ADHD shapes the way he thinks, making creative but coherent leaps from one topic to the next. He establishes the conversational, slightly rabbit hole-filled style that continues throughout the book. As a nature enthusiast who spends a frankly absurd amount of my free time cleaning up litter, and someone with a diagnosis of dyslexia who once dreamed of becoming a Senko, I felt an immediate connection with the premise of this book. In fact, chapter 2, which is about pursuing a diagnosis, felt like it was written for me. I have suspected I might be autistic for quite some time, a suspicion which several of the people I am closest to have shared. But because I emigrate so often, pursuing a formal diagnosis hasn't really been practical because it simply hasn't been my priority. Every time I've been back in the UK and thought about doing it, I've ended up deciding that waiting for a formal piece of paper wouldn't necessarily improve my quality of life enough to justify putting an adventure on hold. I really appreciated the discussion
about why people do or do not seek diagnosis, which was non-judgmental and actually very affirming. I really loved chapter 6. I'll give you 5 seconds to skip to the next chapter using the timestamp on the video player right now if you want to avoid spoilers. Chapter 6 is about halfway through the book, and it feels like the emotional heart of the whole thing. After getting through the chapters about diagnosis and the horrors of the education system for way too many neurodivergent students, and the immeasurable benefits nature could bring to our lives if only we had more and fairer access to it, we get to the emotional payoff of spending some time really appreciating the strengths that neurodivergent people have and the irreplaceable benefits that brings to conservation. Harkness flies through several examples from his case studies, with slightly less detail than I would have liked, before reaching Colin Everett. I particularly liked this case study because he writes, he described his main strength as his desire and ability to focus and concentrate on apparently small details. He's so adept at this, he's certain, that this is one of the main reasons people employ him. Often, when out in the field, he will amaze people with his ability to notice everything. Even if someone else is talking, if there's a fragment of a bird call somewhere in the distance, he will pick it up and usually identify it as well. In mainstream school settings, hyperfocus and heightened senses are all too often treated like problems which need to be overcome. It is so refreshing to realize that there are situations where these difficulties are not only beneficial but actually invaluable. And that, I think, is the crux of the matter. Conservation is trying to understand and protect an extraordinarily complicated world. Why would we want everyone approaching that in exactly the same way? Saving the world needs everyone on side to gather every available idea.
The recent flooding means that loads and loads of litter has been left a little bit higher up on the banks than it usually would be. Some of it I can reach today. You can see there's so much here. But I think I'll be back with a net to try and get a little bit more of it.
Non-fiction texts do not always have a particularly compelling emotional arc. But listening to this in the hours I spent cleaning the umidal, unpacking at my new house, and walking the dogs in my new neighbourhood was just as enticing and engaging as most of the fiction I usually read. Leading the reader along an emotional journey is no mean feat when writing non-fiction, so I think it deserves a moment of appreciation. Although some aspects of this book weren't especially conducive to getting things done. This book seems to be written to intentionally encourage the reader to dive down the rabbit holes it leaves perfectly placed for you to fall into. I don't know if this was accidental, because the author has ADHD and is more easily distracted than others, or if this was an intentional feature, designed to make the readers experience the same sensation people with ADHD live with all the time. Either way, during this litter picking session, I found myself pausing the audio and Googling some of the things he mentioned, and leaving the tabs open to remind myself to go back when I got home. I spent hours reading about the Wilderness Grove, rewilding on the Knepp estate, and perusing the website of the British Dragonfly Society, which links to loads of resources brimming with ideas for ways to make your own back garden into a wildlife hotspot. I am totally inspired and will be figuring out ways to turn the back garden in my new house into a tiny wildlife sanctuary. So come back in a few weeks when it's spring proper here in Chile for some gardening videos. I've left links to all of these resources in the description below so that you can fall down the same rabbit holes I did. You're welcome. Although animals were mentioned several times throughout the book, I would have loved to see some more detail about the role they play in both conservation and the lives of neurodivergent people. I volunteered on a rewilding farm in Wales many, many years ago, and there was already a plethora of research about the symbiosis between certain heritage cattle breeds and the seeds which flourish in the holes their hooves leave in wetland areas. I think there's a lot to be said about conservation grazing, native breeds, and the therapeutic use of animals for neurodivergent individuals, so it felt a bit like a chapter was missing. That said, Harkness does acknowledge that both biodiversity and neurodiversity are essentially infinite topics. And obviously a line must be drawn somewhere, or researching could have become an eternal project. So, why does biodiversity need neurodiversity? I think the answer is that there isn't one ideal way of seeing the natural world. Different brains notice different things, they solve different problems, they experience nature differently. And conservation is working off of an incomplete map when those perspectives aren't included. I loved this book, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone interested in either neurodivergence or conservation. I think it does a brilliant job of explaining to people in the conservation sector what the benefits of more inclusion are for their conservation goals, without presenting neurodivergent people as some kind of magical beings. Simultaneously, it gives an immersive and authentic glimpse into the lives of some neurodivergent people and is a beautiful window into the reality of daily life.
I am extremely grateful that the recycling point is so close to the place where I access this wetland. I haven't got to carry all of this too far. My bags are absolutely full and there is still so much litter left. It really hurts my heart to leave it like this. But I'll be back with another book and some more bags and probably some friends. So like and subscribe if you want to see the next bit of cleaning up this urban wetland. Okay, I couldn't resist. I have enough space for one more thing.
The biggest compliment I can give to this book is that I've already recommended it to a student who I think will benefit from seeing neurodivergent adults living meaningful, successful, and sustainable lives.